So part of the issue is that I think that a lot of, sociologists are talking about there's a divide in our country that is really, there's part of it that we can attribute to the rapid growth of technology, and the ubiquitous nature of it. So sociologists are talking about, during the course of human evolution, at the point that a new language is born, it's a very pivotal moment in time. And as we know, new languages have been born. This is not Pig Latin. People are emoting differently, they're thinking differently, they're feeling differently. Sociologists have talked about how we have never seen the kind of generational divide that we now see between parent and child. It was always around music or clothing, but the divide between parents and children right now because of technology is pretty substantial. So people are feeling displaced in their lives, even if they have a job and they can keep that job and they feel good about it. But when you then layer upon that the fact that technology has upended long-standing business models, there is a healthy number of people in our country who are feeling displaced rightly, who wonder if they are relevant, who wonder if their skills are obsolete. And I think we need to address that, and we need to deal with it. And we have to do it in a way that, one, is about truth-telling. I think that's part of what we're missing right now in this country. We need to speak truth to people. And there is something that is also happening, which is that people are feeling a sense of distrust of authority, of institutions, of their government. And as we know in our personal relationships, a relationship of trust is the foundation of it is truth. Truth is something also we know in our personal and professional relationships. To speak truth makes people uncomfortable.
Right, but what's the truth?
And so leaders don't like to make people uncomfortable if they're up for election, and so they don't often speak truth in a way that will make their audience feel uncomfortable.
So what's the truth?
So the truth is that we are a changing society. The truth is that at some point we're going to look at a situation where driverless cars are going to be. Where the jobs that employed large numbers of people around driving something on wheels will not exist, be it a truck, be it a UPS driver, a postal worker, a cab driver. We have to speak truth about that. We have to speak truth about the fact that we are automating certain industries, including coal mining. Now, and so we can talk about coal mining, and people think that, oh, the conversation is, do you care what kind of energy are we talking about, and are we talking about the environment and greenhouse gas emissions? No, it's just actually we're going to automate that even if we keep the coal mines open. We need to speak truth. We have to speak truth, and then we have to understand that once truth has been spoken and acknowledged, we have to transition people into the workforce. And part of that is going to be to retrain the workforce. And part of my obsession right now is what we need to do around retraining, that group of people who are between about 30 and 50, who once had a job, who are unemployed, and who want to work. And we're going to have to, I think, rely on our community college structure. We're going to have to learn to also transition them into renewable energies and teach them about adoption of technology. And Kara, I think one of the pieces that's really critical about that is also understanding that for a lot of the folks who want the jobs that need to be filled, they need to be trained in a way that their priority is not to go through that education process to get a cap and a gown. They want to go through that education process to get the certificate that is necessary for them to take the job. So the point is that the vast majority of people have so much more in common than what separates us. And, so let's just think of it in the context of universal values and universal truths. And I think that what has happened in Washington, D.C. over the years is we have accepted this premise that is a false premise, that we are a divided country. And the only way that I think we're going to come out of this is to acknowledge that there are these universal truths, and to acknowledge that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us.
So you talked a lot about truth, universal truth, which I'm a big fan of, truth generally. But how do you speak truth or talk about truth to people whose entire vehicle for their vehicle is the derangement or perversion of truth, and that the tool they use is to take what is true and turn it into something that is a complete lie. So how do you raise up away from like, okay, we're all reasonable here and we agree on some basic truths, right? Paris Accord, really good idea. But if you can twist that and make it into something that sounds dangerous and scary and worrisome to a large group of people, or is something that's completely untrue, how do you use, like, how does language work there, and how would you see it working?
So thank you. That's a wonderful question. I'll use your example, Paris Accord. The way that I might think about talking about it is not about necessarily greenhouse gas emissions or about scientists. And my mother was a scientist. I love science and I love scientists. But I would talk about it just based on just the basic fundamental issue there. Everyone needs to breathe clean air and drink clean water. And if you're talking with a family in Flint, Michigan, or in some places in Ohio, or some places in the South, where that is not something they can rely on, they'll hear that because they know they can't rely on it. And that's a universal truth. And I think we have, there's in certain African countries, when you meet someone for the first time, the greeting is not pleased to meet you. It's, I see you. I see you. I see you in your full relief, in all the contexts and parameters in which you live. My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. So I see you, the mom who is trying to get her kids to school every day, and you understand, and you understand something about what her existence involves, including that she just wants her kids to have clean water and clean air. Seeing people in the circumstances in which they live, and then talking with them in a way that acknowledges that we see them for all the dimensions of who they are. That's what I mean by universal truths as much as anything. But I would also add that I think it's really important that we don't, that there's nothing about our tone or the inference of what we're saying that suggests that people who voted one way were less intelligent or informed than we are. That is a mistake, because it's actually not necessarily accurate. And so there is that part of it, which is in speaking truth and wanting to then convince someone that the Paris Accord matter, that greenhouse gas emissions are a real threat, that CO2 is a real threat. Let's not say, so for you to support some other perspective makes you dumb. Let's take it back to the thing where we can actually agree. We need clean water and clean air. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so let's all agree that's a priority for us, and we don't want anyone who's going to threaten that and our access to clean water, clean air. I'll give you an example of, like, again, there's so many examples of California and what we have done that show the connection between a clean air and having policy priorities, and people in elected office care about the significance of greenhouse gas emissions, vehicle emissions. Now, I'll give you an example. We're in Southern California. Anybody remember coming to LA like in the 80s?
Yeah, it was smoggy.
It was awful. It was so thick, the smog, right? You'd sneeze, people get asthma. It was awful. And then what happened? There was a policy decision. Hey, guess what? The vehicle emissions are contributing to that thing happening. We're going to change the whole deal. And now you can see the sky in LA. And so we have examples of the connection between these points, so we can show people the math and the dots. But ultimately, the point is you want to breathe clean air.
Getting down to it.
Yeah.